The 2022 Formula 1 regulations are just 1 week away from being used in their first race, and as you probably already know, they're designed to create better racing. They've been designed so that teams can't find as many loopholes, so hopefully we'll have closer races as well as better ones. So why is it that out of all 10 teams that are going to start the Bahrain Grand Prix, not one of their designs is like another? And why do I think it's so important that we keep it that way? Well, there's only one way to find out. Now, as well as making low quality YouTube videos about them for a living, I also really like the whole engineering side of F1 cars. It's what first got me interested in the sport. But something that's always sort of annoyed me about F1 is how strict the regulations are. I mean, we absolutely need them so we don't end up with cars having 16 wheels and wings the size of small mountains, but at the same time I think it would be good to see what teams would come up with if they had completely free reign. But let's be real, the sport would be boring to watch if we had one team come up with some ludicrous, impossible to copy idea and just dominate it. And that's why I've titled this video Competition versus Creativity. Because F1 needs to strike a balance between being an entertaining series for viewers to enjoy and a platform to foster the best engineering minds in the world, with the end goal of allowing the technology to make it to standard cars. You could argue that giving teams free reign could level the playing field a bit, because there would be an opportunity for teams with lower budgets to innovate, instead of forcing them to conform to a set of regulations that could be exploited more by teams with better paid lawyers and engineers to examine and interpret the regulations. But on the other hand, you could argue that the best cars will always be made from the best money, because that's how the world works. So what if we have a system where every team pays a fee to be in the sport, and that money be dished out to all of the teams in reverse championship order for them to spend on development, with some money left over to be given strictly as profit for the teams, which is told in the standard fashion. It sounds complicated, because it is, but this would allow every team to compete fairly, as well as retaining an incentive to perform well. There's still the issue of how drivers should be paid, but this video is about the cars and the cars alone. This would ensure that all parties in this sport are profitable, too, with F1's huge advertising and ticket sales being able to bump up the cash deficit. Of course, a sponsorless team that consistently performs badly will be a loss-making one, but again that means we'll have a system where teams are actively encouraged not just to use F1 as a billboard, but to provide genuine sporting entertainment. Definitely not aimed at Haas. I realise that money isn't a huge issue in the impact of the rules on competition, but it's still important I mention it. Enforcing a stricter set of rules in Formula 1 would essentially just bring it closer to IndyCar in that the only difference in the cars is the engine, but just one look at an Indy race is enough to tell you that they do much better for close racing. But going back to the point I made earlier, is it the right decision to turn Formula 1 into a spec series? In my opinion, absolutely not. As I mentioned, one of the main things that got me into the sport was the complexity of the cars. But as well as that, there are thousands, if not tens of thousands of people who work in F1 developing the cars, and what would we do with all these people if they suddenly became redundant? There's only so many checkouts in Tesco's that need filling. But what if the rules was simply to become stricter? Well, if you look back you can see that F1 has gradually been tightening the loopholes in the rules over the years, but yet we haven't lost the dominance aspect of the sport, and I think there's a good reason for that. A tighter set of rules means that anyone who does find a loophole will have a proportionally larger gain to make from exploiting it than if the rules allowed for multiple aerodynamic concepts to be explored. Are you still with me? Good. If we were to loosen the rules, then while the benefit of finding a loophole would be smaller, there would be more to find and therefore a larger gain to make. But assuming that most teams are able to spot and exploit several loopholes in the regulations, then one team having more than another wouldn't represent as large a gain as just the one. But the argument against this has already been made clear. If we want to be able to race these cars, then we need to make sure they don't throw off loads of dirty air. Perhaps the solution to this would be to leave loopholes in the rules for underfloor design while being fairly strict on the overbody flow. Last year's rules I think were the strictest they've ever been. We saw very little difference in the general designs of the cars, and as well as this, because this was the latter stages of the regulations, most teams had got their car designs down to a very similar concept. Now, this presents the idea of the perfect car. Is that even a thing? I mean, theoretically it has to be. Maybe not the perfect car for every racetrack, but the perfect interpretation of the brief, in order to maximize every bit of lap time from every track. Mercedes' slim nose concept seemed to be the prevailing one, with only a select few not using it by 2021. That said, one key member of those who didn't use a Mercedes-style nose was Red Bull, who won the championship. And this is exactly what I love about F1, the fact that there isn't a one-size-fits-all car design. Everything about the RB16B was dissimilar from the W12, but yet they were nip and tuck all the way through the year. And therefore, this should tell us that there was no perfect car, but there is a perfect use of the rules for a car's concept. Both Mercedes and Red Bull got as close as they could to that perfection, with Red Bull running a short wheelbase, highly raked car, while Mercedes had a long wheelbase, low rake design. But with that said, there has to be a perfect design for the 2022 regulations too. After a few days of going round and round in Barcelona, we're not exactly going to know which one that is. But it's not long till we know who's got the best so far. The perfect car will not come from the first year of development, so I'd expect to be seeing it in a minimum of 3 years. Now, I'm no engineer. I like aerodynamics and it's a field I want to go into in future, but I can't say for certain what impact there would be on changing the rules. So it's over to you. What do you think F1 should do? If I had to give an opinion though, then here it is. Having seen the huge variation with the 2022 cars so far, I think they've got the creativity part nailed down. As for competition, we'll see in the first race, but initial signs indicate that the cars are very closely matched too. But yeah, I don't expect this video to get many views because it's not really a relevant topic, but this is a video I've been wanting to make for a while now, and I'm glad I have, because it's always fun just to waffle about the things I love. If you enjoyed this video, then subscribe if you're not already, give the video a like, etc. But otherwise, thank you for watching, and I will see you all later.